You step into the cold stone corridor of a medieval manor house, the air sharp enough to bite at your lungs. It's winter, deep winter, and the kind of cold that settles into your bones and refuses to leave. Outside, snow blankets the village in silence, muffling every sound except the distant howl of wind through the trees. Inside, the walls are thick, built to keep out enemies and storms alike, but they trap the chill as easily as they trap warmth. Your breath rises in pale clouds before your face, and you pull your woolen cloak tighter, feeling its rough weave scratch against your neck. You wonder, as you stand here in this dim hallway lit only by a single guttering candle, how anyone managed to sleep through nights like these. How did they endure the cold, the darkness, the endless stretch of winter evenings when the sun set early and rose late? How did a young bride, nervous and uncertain, face her wedding night in a world so different from our own? Before we continue, you're welcome to like the video or subscribe if you enjoy calm history like this. And if you're listening right now, feel free to share where you are in the world. Now, let the modern world slip away, dim the lights around you, and let your breathing slow. Tonight, we're stepping back into the medieval past, into the lives of women who faced their wedding nights with a mixture of duty, fear, and quiet hope. Picture yourself not as a noblewoman in a grand castle, but as a peasant girl in a small village, barely 17, standing at the threshold of a new life. The wedding has just ended. The feast, such as it was, has left your stomach full of coarse bread and ale. Your family's cottage is behind you now, and ahead lies the home of your new husband, a young man you've known only from passing glances at the market and the well. Your marriage was arranged months ago, a practical union to secure land, labor, and alliances between families. Love was never part of the agreement. You walk through the village as dusk settles, the sky fading from pale gray to deep indigo. The path is rutted and muddy, churned by cart wheels and the hooves of oxen. Around you, the village huddles close, its wattle and daub cottages leaning together like old friends. Smoke rises from every roof, thin streams curling into the cold air, carrying the smell of burning wood and peat. You pass the blacksmith's forge, its fire banked for the night, and the alehouse, where laughter and rough voices spill through the cracks in the door. Your new husband walks beside you, silent and stiff. He's broad-shouldered, his hands thick from work at the mill, his face smudged with flour dust that never quite washes away. You've barely spoken to him. What is there to say? Your mother's arranged this match, your father's negotiated the dowry, and the village priest blessed your union this morning in the drafty stone church. Now, as the sky darkens and the first stars appear, you're walking toward the unknown. The wedding night. You've heard whispers about it from older women, their voices lowering when they thought you weren't listening. They spoke of duty, of pain, of the necessity of producing heirs to work the land and carry on the family name. They spoke of the bedding ceremony, a tradition that makes your stomach clench with dread. It's not a private affair. The village expects to witness your union, to ensure the marriage is properly consummated, to confirm that you are indeed a bride and not just a girl playing at womanhood. You reach the miller's house, a larger cottage than your family's, with a thatched roof that sags in the middle and walls of wattle and daub painted white with lime. Inside, the single room is lit by the glow of the hearth, where a fire crackles and spits. The air is thick with smoke, for chimneys are rare in peasant homes, and the smoke curls up to the rafters, blackening the thatch and stinging your eyes. The floor is packed earth, covered with rushes that crunch underfoot and smell faintly of mildew and old straw. Your mother-in-law is there, waiting, her face hard and watchful. She's been married for 20 years, born 6 children, and buried 3. She looks at you with the critical eye of someone assessing livestock, weighing your worth by the width of your hips and the strength of your arms. Behind her, the bed looms in the corner, a low frame of rough-hewn wood with a mattress stuffed with straw. It's covered with a coarse woolen blanket, patched and faded, and a few thin linen sheets. You know what comes next. The bedding ceremony. Already, you can hear voices outside, the villagers gathering, their laughter growing louder as they pass around jugs of ale. They'll escort you to the bed, sing bawdy songs, make crude jokes, and wait until they're satisfied that the marriage has been sealed. There's no privacy here, no tenderness. This is a public event, a spectacle, and you are the unwilling star. Your husband clears his throat, his face flushed, whether from ale or embarrassment, you can't tell. He gestures toward the bed, and you move toward it slowly, your legs heavy, your heart pounding. The door bursts open, and the crowd pours in, filling the small room with noise and laughter. Women clap and cheer, men shout lewd encouragements, and children peer through the doorway, wide-eyed and curious. You sit on the edge of the bed, your hands clasped tightly in your lap, and try to disappear. But there's no escaping this. The village has expectations, and you must meet them. Your mother-in-law hands you a cup of spiced wine, warm and sweet, meant to calm your nerves, though it does little to ease the knot in your stomach. Your husband sits beside you, and the crowd presses closer, their faces ruddy in the firelight, their voices a roar in your ears. And then, slowly, the ritual begins. The women pull back the blanket, exposing the straw mattress beneath. They gesture for you to lie down, and you do, your body stiff and unyielding. Your husband follows, his weight settling beside you, and the crowd erupts in cheers. They sing songs, ancient and bawdy, about plowing fields and sowing seeds, their words making your cheeks burn. You close your eyes, wishing you could vanish, wishing you were anywhere but here. But this is your life now. This is what it means to be a wife in the medieval world, where marriage is a contract, a transaction, a means of survival. Love, if it comes at all, will come later, slowly, like the thaw after a long winter. For now, you endure. The crowd lingers, drinking and laughing, until finally, mercifully, they begin to drift away. Your mother-in-law is the last to leave, her sharp eyes lingering on you with a look that says, "Do your duty." The door closes, and the room falls silent except for the crackle of the fire. You lie there in the darkness, the straw mattress prickling your back, the woolen blanket scratchy against your skin. Beside you, your husband shifts, his breath warm and heavy. He doesn't speak, and neither do you. What is there to say? You are strangers bound together by vows you barely understand, by a future you never chose. As the fire burns low and the room grows colder, you think about the life that stretches ahead. The endless labor, the children you'll bear, the winters you'll endure. You think about the women who came before you, your mother, your grandmother, the countless generations of women who faced this same night with the same mixture of fear and resignation. And slowly, as exhaustion overtakes you, you drift into an uneasy sleep, the first night of your new life as a wife, a life shaped by duty, survival, and the quiet hope that somehow, in this harsh and unforgiving world, you might find a sliver of tenderness. The morning after your wedding night arrives cold and gray, the pale light seeping through the gaps in the shutters. You wake slowly, your body stiff from the hard mattress, your mind heavy with the weight of what has passed. Beside you, your husband is already stirring, pulling on his boots and tunic, preparing for the day's work at the mill. He glances at you briefly, his expression unreadable, then leaves without a word. You lie there for a moment longer, listening to the sounds of the village waking. A rooster crows, sharp and insistent. A dog barks. Somewhere nearby, a woman shouts at her children, her voice carrying through the thin walls. You pull the blanket tighter, even though it offers little warmth, and stare at the soot-blackened rafters above. This is your home now. This single room with its earthen floor and smoky hearth, its rough furniture and meager belongings. You are no longer your father's daughter, but your husband's wife, your mother-in-law's burden, the village's newest source of gossip. Every step you take, every word you speak, will be watched and judged. Already, you can imagine the women at the well this morning, their voices low and conspiratorial as they discuss your wedding night. Did she cry? Did she bleed? Is she worthy? You rise, your bare feet cold against the packed earth, and begin the day's work. There's a fire to build, water to fetch, bread to bake. Your mother-in-law appears in the doorway, her face as hard as the day before, and begins issuing orders. You nod, moving quickly to obey, aware that any hesitation will be met with a sharp tongue or a harder hand. As you work, you think about the wedding itself, the ceremony that bound you to this life. It was brief, conducted in the dim stone church that sits at the edge of the village, its walls damp with moisture and its floor uneven with age. The priest, an old man with a voice like gravel, spoke in Latin. Words you didn't understand but knew were meant to make your union sacred. Your husband repeated his vows, his voice steady, and you whispered yours, your throat tight with nerves. There was no romance in it, no tenderness. Your husband didn't look at you with love or longing, only with the same practical regard one might give a plow horse or a milk cow. You were a tool, a means to an end, a vessel for the children who would one day inherit the mill and the strip of land that came with your dowry. The dowry. You think of it now as you knead dough by the fire, your hands aching from the rough work. Your family gave what they could. A few chickens, a bolt of cloth, a wobbly stool your father carved himself. It wasn't much, but it was enough to seal the agreement. Your new family, in turn, promised to provide for you, to give you a place to sleep and food to eat, to ensure your survival through the harsh winters and the lean years. But survival, you're learning, comes at a cost. Already, your body aches from the unfamiliar labor. Your hands are rough and reddened from hauling water and scrubbing pots. Your back throbs from bending over the fire, and your feet are numb with cold. This is what it means to be a wife, to work from dawn until dusk, to shoulder the burden of a household, to keep the fire burning and the family fed. And yet, as you work, you find yourself thinking not just of the hardship, but of the strange intimacy of it all. Last night, you shared a bed with a man you barely knew, your bodies pressed together under a single blanket, seeking warmth in the cold. This morning, you woke in his home, surrounded by his belongings, his mother's watchful eyes, his father's stern expectations. You are woven into the fabric of this family now, whether you like it or not. The day passes in a blur of tasks. You fetch water from the well, hauling the heavy bucket up the path while the cold wind bites at your cheeks. You sweep the floor, scattering fresh rushes to cover the packed earth. You tend the fire, feeding it with logs and peat, coaxing the flames higher to keep the room warm. And all the while, your mother-in-law hovers, her sharp eyes missing nothing, her sharp tongue quick to criticize. By midday, the village is alive with activity. Women gather at the well, their buckets balanced on their hips, their voices rising and falling in the rhythm of gossip. You join them, your own bucket heavy in your hands, and feel their eyes on you. They smile, but the smiles are thin and sharp, like the edge of a knife. One of them, an older woman with a face like weathered leather, leans close and asks in a voice loud enough for all to hear, "So girl, how was your first night?" You feel your cheeks burn, but you force a smile, mumbling something non-committal. The women laugh, their voices carrying across the village square, and you duck your head, wishing you could disappear. This is your life now, a life lived under the constant scrutiny of the village, where every moment is public, every misstep noted, every failure remembered. As the afternoon wears on, you find yourself longing for the simplicity of your old life, when you were just a daughter, not yet burdened with the weight of being a wife. You think of your mother's cottage, smaller and shabbier than this one, but familiar and safe. You think of your younger siblings, still children, still free from the responsibilities that now press down on you like a heavy stone. But there's no going back. You made your vows, signed your name, or rather, had it signed for you cannot read or write, and stepped across the threshold into this new life. You are a wife now, and with that title comes a host of expectations. You must keep the house, bear children, obey your husband, serve your mother-in-law, and earn the respect of the village. It's a daunting list, and you're not sure you're equal to the task. As evening falls, your husband returns from the mill, his face and hands dusted with flour. He washes at the bucket by the door, scrubbing his hands until the water runs gray, then sits at the rough wooden table to eat. Your mother-in-law serves him first, a thick stew of barley and turnips, and he eats in silence, his eyes fixed on the bowl. You eat after him, your portion smaller, your stomach too knotted with nerves to feel hunger. When the meal is done, the fire is banked, and the room grows dim. Your husband rises, stretching, and glances at you. There's no warmth in his gaze, but no cruelty either, just a weary acceptance of the life you now share. He gestures toward the bed, and you follow, your heart sinking. This is the pattern of your nights now. The bed, the darkness, the shared silence. You lie beside him, your body stiff, your mind racing, and try to imagine a future where this feels normal, where the awkwardness fades and something like companionship takes its place. But for now, on this second night of your marriage, you simply endure. You pull the blanket over yourself, feeling the cold seep through the thin wool, and close your eyes. Outside, the wind howls, rattling the shutters, and you think of all the women who came before you, who lay in beds just like this one, who faced the same fears and uncertainties, who survived. And slowly, as the fire dies and the room grows colder still, you drift into sleep, your dreams filled with images of the life you've left behind and the life that now stretches before you, uncertain and uncharted. The days blur together, each one much like the last. You wake before dawn, your body aching from the hard mattress, and begin the endless cycle of chores. There's water to fetch, bread to bake, clothes to mend, animals to tend. Your hands, once soft and unmarked, grow rough and calloused. Your back, unused to such constant labor, throbs with a dull, persistent ache. Your mother-in-law watches you closely, her eyes sharp and critical. She corrects you constantly, her voice harsh. Not like that, girl. Do it this way. Hurry up, we haven't got all day. You call that bread? It's hard as a stone. You grit your teeth and try to meet her expectations, but it feels like an impossible task. Nothing you do is ever quite right. Your husband, for his part, is neither kind nor cruel. He simply exists, a silent presence in the house, coming and going with the rhythms of his work. He speaks little, and when he does, his words are brief and functional. Pass the ale. More wood for the fire. He doesn't ask how you're feeling, doesn't inquire about your day. You are, to him, a part of the household machinery, expected to function smoothly and without complaint. At night, you lie beside him in the narrow bed, the straw mattress rustling beneath you. Sometimes he turns to you, his hands rough and urgent, and you submit without a word, your body stiff and unresponsive. Other nights, he simply falls asleep, his snores filling the small room, and you lie awake, staring into the darkness, wondering if this is all there is. You think often of the bedding ceremony, the night the village came to witness your union. The memory fills you with shame and anger. It was meant to be a celebration, but it felt like a violation, a public display of something that should have been private. You remember the faces in the crowd, their eyes gleaming with curiosity and alcohol, their voices loud and lewd. You remember your mother-in-law's cold, assessing gaze, and your husband's awkward silence. And you wonder, not for the first time, what it would have been like to marry for love. You've heard the stories, the tales sung by traveling minstrels, of knights and ladies who fall deeply, passionately in love. But those are just stories, fantasies meant to entertain, not to reflect the reality of life in a medieval village. Here, marriage is a practical arrangement, a way to secure land, labor, and lineage. Love, if it comes at all, is a fortunate accident, not something to be counted on. As the weeks pass, you begin to settle into the rhythm of your new life. The tasks that once seemed overwhelming become routine. You learn where to find the best firewood, how to coax the bread dough to rise, how to avoid your mother-in-law's sharpest criticisms. You learn the names of the other women in the village, the ones who gather at the well each morning, their voices a constant hum of gossip and complaint. You learn, too, the unspoken rules of village life, who to avoid, who to trust, who to flatter, who to fear. You learn that the blacksmith's wife is a bully, quick to spread rumors and slow to forgive. You learn that the widow who lives at the edge of the village is kind, always ready with a smile or a word of encouragement. You learn that the priest, for all his piety, has a fondness for ale and a wandering eye. And you learn about the other young brides, the girls who, like you, were married off in practical unions, their lives now bound to men they barely know. You see them at the well, their faces drawn and tired, their hands red and chapped from work. You see them at church, their eyes downcast, their lips moving in silent prayer. You see them in the fields, bent over their tasks, their bodies moving with the slow, steady rhythm of endless labor. One of them, a girl named Agnes, becomes something like a friend. She's a year older than you, married to the blacksmith's apprentice, and she has a sharp wit that makes you laugh despite yourself. She tells you stories of her own wedding night, making light of the bedding ceremony with a humor that borders on bitterness. "At least it's over," she says, shrugging. "Now we just have to get through the rest of our lives." You laugh, but the laughter feels hollow, because you know she's right. The wedding night was just the beginning, the first step in a long, hard journey. Ahead of you lie years of labor, childbirth, loss, and survival. The medieval world is not kind to women, and especially not to peasant women, whose lives are shaped by poverty, hard work, and the constant threat of disease and death. But there are moments, small and fleeting, when you glimpse something more. A kind word from your husband, a smile from Agnes, the warmth of the fire on a cold night. These moments don't erase the hardship, but they make it bearable. Reminders that even in this harsh world, there is still room for small kindnesses, small joys. As winter deepens, the village settles into a quiet rhythm. The days grow shorter, the nights longer and colder. Snow falls, covering the fields and rooftops in a thick white blanket, muffling sound and slowing movement. The work continues, relentless and unchanging, but there's a sense of hunkering down, of enduring until spring arrives. You spend your days indoors, close to the fire, mending clothes and spinning wool. Your mother-in-law teaches you, grudgingly, the skills you'll need to survive. How to card wool, how to spin it into thread, how to weave it into cloth. It's tedious work, repetitive and mind-numbing, but it's necessary. Clothing is precious in the medieval world, and every family must produce its own. At night, you lie beside your husband, the blanket pulled tight against the cold. Sometimes, in the darkness, you think about the life you might have had if things had been different. If you'd been born into a wealthier family, if you'd married for love, if you'd had a choice. But those thoughts lead nowhere, so you push them aside and focus on the present, on the tasks at hand, on the simple act of surviving one more day. And slowly, imperceptibly, you begin to change. The girl who stood at the threshold of the miller's house, nervous and uncertain, is fading, replaced by someone harder, more resilient. You learn to endure the long hours of labor, the constant scrutiny, the cold and the hunger. You learn to hold your tongue, to keep your head down, to do what's expected without complaint. But you also learn to find strength in small things. The warmth of the fire, the taste of fresh bread, the sound of laughter at the well. These are the moments that sustain you, that remind you that life, even a hard life, is still worth living. And as the winter night deepens, as the snow falls and the wind howls, you close your eyes and let yourself drift, secure in the knowledge that you have survived another day, another night, another step on the long, hard path that is your life as a medieval wife. The cottage you now call home is small, a single room built from wattle and daub, the walls woven from thin branches and plastered with a mixture of mud, straw, and dung. It's a simple structure, one that countless peasant families have built and lived in for generations, and it smells of earth and smoke and human life. The roof is thatched, thick layers of straw tied down with ropes, and it sags in the middle, weighed down by years of rain and snow. Inside, the floor is packed earth, hard and uneven, covered with a layer of rushes that crunch underfoot. These rushes are meant to absorb spills and provide a bit of cushioning, but they also trap dirt and moisture, and they smell faintly of mildew. You replace them when you can, scattering fresh rushes over the old, but it's a never-ending battle against the damp and the filth. The hearth is the heart of the home, a shallow pit dug into the floor, lined with stones, where the fire burns day and night. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof to let the smoke escape, and the room is always hazy, the air thick and acrid. Your eyes water constantly, and your lungs ache from breathing the smoky air. But there's no alternative. The fire is life, providing warmth, light, and the means to cook food. Without it, you would freeze. The furniture is sparse and rough. A table, a few stools, a chest for storing clothes and valuables, though you have few of either. The bed, such as it is a simple frame of wood with a mattress stuffed with straw. It's lumpy and uncomfortable, and the straw pokes through the thin linen covering, jabbing you in the back and sides. You cover it with a woolen blanket, coarse and scratchy, and a few thin sheets, but even with all of this, the bed is cold and hard, nothing like the soft feather beds you've heard nobles sleep on. You share this space with your husband and, often, his mother. She sleeps on a pallet by the fire, her presence a constant reminder of your place in the household hierarchy. You are the newcomer, the youngest, the least experienced, and she never lets you forget it. Her sharp tongue is a fixture of daily life, her criticisms endless, her expectations impossibly high. But it's not just the three of you in this small space. There are animals, too. A goat, tethered near the door, provides milk and, eventually, meat. A few chickens roost in the rafters, their droppings adding to the general filth of the floor. In the coldest months, even the family pig is brought inside, its warmth a small compensation for the smell and the mess. This is peasant life, cramped and communal, with little privacy and less comfort. You learn quickly that in a world where survival is a constant struggle, there's no room for the niceties of personal space or individual preference. Everyone shares everything: the fire, the food, the work, the warmth. And you learn, too, that warmth is precious. In the depths of winter, when the wind howls and the snow piles high against the walls, the fire is the only thing that keeps you alive. You tend it constantly, feeding it with logs and peat, coaxing the flames higher. You huddle close to it, your hands outstretched to catch the heat, your body angled to shield it from the drafts that seep through the walls. At night, you all sleep close together, bodies pressed together for warmth. You, your husband, your mother-in-law, and even the animals, all sharing the same small space, the same meager heat. It's uncomfortable and often unpleasant, the smell of unwashed bodies and animals mingling with the smoke, but it's necessary. In a world without central heating or insulated walls, shared warmth is the only way to survive the winter. You think often of the women who came before you, the countless generations of peasant wives who lived in cottages just like this one, who faced the same hardships, the same endless labor, the same cold and hunger. They survived, and so will you. It's a grim sort of comfort, but it's something. As the weeks turn into months, you begin to notice the small rhythms of village life, the patterns that repeat day after day, season after season. There are the daily tasks, the fetching of water, the baking of bread, the tending of animals. There are the weekly rituals, the trip to church on Sunday, the visit to the market on market day. And there are the seasonal cycles, the planting in spring, the harvest in fall, the long, hard winter when the work slows but the cold and hunger increase. You notice, too, the ways in which the village is a community, bound together by shared labor and shared hardship. When someone falls ill, the women gather to help, bringing food and medicine, tending the sick. When a child is born, the whole village celebrates, for children are the future, the hope of the next generation. And when someone dies, the village mourns together, burying the dead in the churchyard and praying for their souls. But the village is also a place of gossip and judgment, where everyone knows everyone else's business, and privacy is a luxury no one can afford. The women at the well are the village's informal news network, spreading rumors and speculation with equal enthusiasm. You learn to navigate this carefully, to guard your words, to present a cheerful face even when you're struggling. You learn, too, about the hierarchies within the village, the unspoken rules that govern who has power and who doesn't. The lord of the manor, distant and rarely seen, owns the land and exacts his dues. The reeve, his representative, collects taxes and enforces the rules. The priest holds spiritual authority, his word law in matters of faith and morals. And then there are the men of the village, the husbands and fathers, who hold sway over their families with an authority that is absolute and unquestioned. As a woman, and especially as a young wife, you have very little power. You are subject to your husband's will, your mother-in-law's judgment, and the village's scrutiny. Your body is not your own, it belongs to your husband, who has the right to demand obedience and submission. Your time is not your own, It belongs to the household, to the endless cycle of labor that keeps the family fed and clothed. And yet, within these constraints, you find small ways to assert yourself. You learn which tasks your mother-in-law dislikes, and you take them on, earning her grudging approval. You learn your husband's moods, when to speak and when to stay silent, when to push and when to yield. You learn the value of a kind word, a shared laugh, a moment of connection in the midst of the daily grind. One evening, as you sit by the fire mending a torn shirt, your husband looks up from his work and says, almost shyly, "You're doing well, you know, better than I expected." It's not much, just a few words, but they warm you more than the fire ever could. It's the first time he's acknowledged your efforts, the first time he's shown any appreciation for the work you do. You smile, ducking your head, and murmur something modest in reply, but inside you feel a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this marriage can become something more than a cold transaction. Maybe, in time, you can build something together, a partnership, a companionship, even a kind of love. But for now, you focus on the present, on the tasks at hand. There's bread to bake, clothes to mend, water to fetch. The fire needs tending, the animals need feeding, the floor needs sweeping. The work is endless, and there's no time for daydreaming. As winter deepens, the village settles into a quiet rhythm. The snow falls steadily, covering the fields and the rooftops, muffling sound and slowing movement. The days are short, the nights long and cold. You spend most of your time indoors, close to the fire, doing the work that can be done by firelight. You spin wool, the spindle turning slowly in your hands, the thread growing longer and longer. You card wool, combing it with wooden paddles until the fibers are straight and smooth. You sew, mending torn clothes and making new ones, your needle moving steadily in the dim light. Your mother-in-law sits beside you, her own hands busy with similar tasks. She's softer now, less critical, perhaps because the long winter has worn her down, or perhaps because you've proven yourself capable. She tells you stories sometimes, tales of her own youth, of the hardships she's faced, the children she's born and lost. You listen, absorbing these fragments of her life, and you feel a reluctant kinship with her. She, too, was once a young bride, uncertain and afraid, thrust into a life she didn't choose. And you realize, with a pang of sympathy, that the harshness of her judgment comes not from cruelty, but from a desire to see you succeed, to ensure that you're strong enough to survive the life that lies ahead. She's teaching you, in her own rough way, how to be a peasant wife, how to endure the hardships and find strength in the small things. As the nights grow colder, you and your husband draw closer together, literally and figuratively. In the narrow bed, you press against each other for warmth, your body's a barrier against the cold that seeps through the walls. Sometimes, in the darkness, he reaches for you, his touch tentative, almost shy, and you respond, your body softening, your heart opening just a little. And in those moments, you glimpse the possibility of something more. Not the grand, passionate love of the minstrel's tales, but something quieter, more enduring. A partnership built on shared hardship, mutual respect, and the small kindnesses that make life bearable. You think of the other young wives in the village, women like Agnes, who face the same struggles, the same fears. You think of the bond you're forming with them, the unspoken understanding that comes from shared experience. You are all of you trying to survive, to carve out a space for yourselves in this harsh, unforgiving world. And as the winter night deepens, as the fire burns low and the room grows cold, you close your eyes and let yourself drift, secure in the knowledge that you are not alone. You have your husband, your mother-in-law, the women at the well, the village itself. You are woven into the fabric of this community, and that, in its own way, is a kind of strength. The coldest nights are the hardest. The fire burns low, the wood running short, and the cold seeps through every crack and crevice in the walls. You huddle under the blanket, your body pressed against your husband's, but even so, you can feel the cold creeping in, numbing your toes and fingers, making your breath visible in the dim light. On these nights, you think of the stories your grandmother used to tell, tales of winters so harsh that people froze to death in their beds, that whole families perished in the night, unable to keep the fire burning long enough to see the dawn. You wonder if this will be one of those winters, if the wood will run out, if the cold will finally win. But you push these thoughts aside and focus on the present, on the small, immediate tasks that keep you alive. You add another log to the fire, watching the flames leap up, hungry and bright. You pull the blanket tighter, tucking it around your body, sealing in what little warmth you have. And you press closer to your husband, seeking his warmth, his solidity, his presence. He stirs, waking briefly, and murmurs something you don't quite catch. You murmur back, a wordless sound of comfort, and he settles again, his arm draped over you, his breath warm against your neck. And in that moment, despite the cold and the hardship, you feel a small measure of peace. Because this is your life now, for better or worse. This small, smoky cottage, this narrow bed, this man beside you. These are the things that define you, the things that will shape your future. And you have chosen, or perhaps fate has chosen for you, to embrace them, to make the best of what you have. As the night wears on, you drift in and out of sleep, your dreams a jumble of images and sensations. You dream of your mother's cottage, warm and familiar, and of your younger self, carefree and unburdened. You dream of the future, of children yet unborn, of seasons yet to come. And you dream of warmth, of a fire that never goes out, of a world where the cold cannot touch you. But when you wake, the cold is still there, pressing in from all sides, relentless and unyielding. You rise, shivering, and tend the fire, coaxing it back to life. You dress quickly, layering on every piece of clothing you own, and step outside into the frozen dawn. The village is quiet, the snow-covered rooftops gleaming in the pale light. Smoke rises from every chimney, thin streams curling into the cold air. You can hear the distant sounds of life, a dog barking, a child crying, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer. But for now, in this moment, you are alone, standing in the cold, your breath forming clouds before your face. And you think, not for the first time, how strange it is that this is your life now, that you are a wife, a member of this household, this village, that you have left behind the girl you were and become someone new, someone shaped by hardship and labor and the constant struggle to survive. But you are surviving. Day by day, night by night, you are learning to navigate this new world, to find your place within it. And that, in itself, is a kind of triumph. You return to the cottage, your cheeks stung with cold, your hands numb. Inside, the fire is burning brightly, and your mother-in-law is already awake, stirring a pot of porridge over the flames. She glances at you, nods, and you take your place beside her, ready to begin another day. The village is not the only place where people huddle together against the cold. In the towns and monasteries scattered across the medieval landscape, communal living is the norm, and sleep is a shared experience, rarely private, often uncomfortable, but always necessary. You imagine yourself now in a different setting, no longer the young bride in the miller's house, but a traveler seeking shelter in a town inn. It's late evening, and the winter cold has driven you indoors, along with a dozen other travelers, all seeking warmth and a place to rest. The inn is a timber-framed building, 2 stories tall, with a common room on the ground floor and sleeping quarters above. The common room is crowded and noisy, filled with the smell of ale and roasted meat, the sound of laughter and conversation. You push your way through the crowd to the bar, where the innkeeper, a stout woman with flour-dusted hands, eyes you critically. "Penny for a bed," she says, her voice flat and businesslike. You fish a coin from your pouch and hand it over, and she jerks her head toward the stairs. "Up there. You'll be sharing." You climb the narrow, creaking stairs to the second floor, where a long, low-ceilinged room awaits. The room is lined with simple wooden cots, each one barely more than a plank with a thin straw mattress. There are no partitions, no curtains, no privacy. The beds are arranged side by side, so close that you can reach out and touch the person next to you. Already, several of the beds are occupied. A merchant snores loudly in one corner, his bulk taking up far more than his share of space. A young couple huddles together in another, their voices low and intimate. An old woman sits on the edge of a cot, her gnarled hands folded in her lap, her eyes half closed. You choose a bed near the middle, dropping your small bundle of belongings beside it. The mattress is lumpy and thin, offering little comfort, but it's better than sleeping on the ground. You sit on the edge of the cot, your back aching from the long day's journey, and take off your shoes, your feet throbbing with relief. Around you, the room fills with travelers, each one seeking their own small space in the crowded quarters. A group of pilgrims enters, their voices loud and cheerful, their faces flushed with ale. They claim the beds at the far end of the room, their laughter echoing off the low ceiling. A lone man, thin and hollow-eyed, takes the bed next to yours. He nods at you briefly, then turns away, wrapping himself in a thin cloak. The innkeeper appears at the top of the stairs, carrying a single candle. She places it on a small table in the center of the room, its flickering light casting long shadows on the walls. "That's all you get," she says, her voice sharp. "Don't let it burn down the place." And with that, she's gone, her heavy footsteps descending the stairs. The room settles into a restless quiet. People shift in their beds, trying to find a comfortable position on the hard mattresses. The pilgrims continue to murmur among themselves, their voices gradually lowering as exhaustion sets in. The old woman lies down, her breathing slow and steady, and you do the same, pulling your cloak over yourself like a blanket. But sleep is elusive. The room is cold, the single candle providing little warmth, and the thin walls do nothing to keep out the winter chill. You can hear the wind outside, rattling the shutters, and you shiver, pulling the cloak tighter. The man next to you coughs, a harsh, rattling sound, and you wonder if he's ill, if you'll catch whatever sickness he carries. This is communal sleep in the medieval world, a far cry from the private bedrooms and soft mattresses of modernity. In the towns and inns, people sleep in close quarters, strangers pressed together, their bodies seeking warmth, their dreams mingling in the darkness. Privacy is a luxury, and comfort is rare. You think of the monasteries, those great stone buildings where monks and nuns live lives of prayer and contemplation. You've heard that they, too, sleep in communal quarters, rows of narrow beds in long dormitories, the air filled with the sound of snores and whispered prayers. The monastic life is one of discipline and austerity, and sleep is no exception. In your mind, you picture a monk lying on his hard pallet, his body wrapped in a coarse woolen habit, his hands folded in prayer. The dormitory is cold, the stone walls radiating chill, and the only heat comes from the bodies of the other monks, sleeping in rows on either side. There are no fires here, no comforts, only the bare minimum needed to sustain life. The monks rise before dawn, their sleep interrupted by the bell that calls them to prayer. They shuffle through the dark corridors, their breath visible in the cold air, and gather in the chapel to sing the first office of the day. Sleep, for them, is a necessity but not a priority. Their lives are devoted to God, and rest is something to be endured, not enjoyed. You think, too, of the nuns, the women who choose a life of devotion over marriage and family. They, too, sleep in communal quarters, their lives governed by the same strict routines, the same austere conditions. You wonder if they ever long for the warmth of a husband's body, the softness of a feather bed, the privacy of a room of their own. Or have they found peace in their chosen life, a sense of purpose that transcends the hardships? These thoughts drift through your mind as you lie in the crowded inn, your body tense, your mind alert. Around you, the other travelers settle into sleep, their breathing deepening, their bodies relaxing. The candle burns low, its flame flickering and dancing, casting strange shadows on the walls. And slowly, gradually, you feel yourself beginning to relax. The cold is still there, pressing in from all sides, but your body is adjusting, finding warmth in the layers of clothing, in the proximity of the other travelers. You close your eyes, letting the sounds of the room wash over you, the snores, the murmurs, the rustle of fabric. And as you drift towards sleep, you think of all the people across the medieval world who are doing the same, lying in crowded rooms, seeking warmth and rest, enduring the long, cold night. You are not alone in your struggle, and that, in its own way, is a comfort. The morning comes early in the inn. You wake to the sound of footsteps on the stairs, the clatter of pots and pans from the common room below. The other travelers are already stirring, sitting up in their beds, rubbing sleep from their eyes. The candle has long since burned out, and the room is dim, lit only by the faint gray light seeping through the cracks in the shutters. You sit up, your body stiff from the hard mattress, and pull on your shoes. The man next to you is already gone, his bed empty, the thin blanket folded neatly at the foot. You gather your belongings, slinging your small bundle over your shoulder, and make your way down the stairs. The common room is bustling with activity. The innkeeper is serving bowls of porridge to the guests, her face as stern and businesslike as it was the night before. You join the line, your stomach rumbling with hunger, and receive your own bowl, thick and grayish and steaming hot. You sit at a long wooden table, squeezing in between a pilgrim and a farmer, and eat quickly, grateful for the warmth of the food. Around you, the other guests do the same, their faces drawn and tired, their movements slow with fatigue. No one speaks much, each person absorbed in their own thoughts, their own plans for the day ahead. When the meal is done, you step outside into the cold morning air. The town is waking up, the streets filling with people, the shops opening their shutters. You can hear the cries of vendors, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the bleating of sheep being driven to market. You pull your cloak tight against the cold and set off down the narrow street, your destination unclear, your path uncertain. This is the life of a traveler in the medieval world, constantly moving, constantly seeking, never quite finding a place to call home. But as you walk, you think of the inn, of the crowded room and the shared warmth, and you feel a strange kinship with the other travelers. You are all of you on the same journey, seeking the same things: warmth, food, shelter, a place to rest. And in that shared struggle, there is a kind of community, a bond that transcends the differences of status or wealth. You think, too, of the village you left behind, of the young bride you once were, and you wonder if she is still there, still tending the fire, still baking bread, still sharing the narrow bed with her husband. You hope she is well, that she has found a measure of peace in her new life, that the hardships have not broken her. And as you walk through the medieval town, the cold biting at your cheeks, the cobblestones uneven beneath your feet, you carry with you the memory of all the places you've been, all the people you've met, all the nights you've survived. You are a traveler now, a wanderer, but you are also a survivor, shaped by the experiences of the medieval world, resilient and enduring. The town is a place of contrasts, where wealth and poverty exist side by side, where grand stone buildings tower over ramshackle wooden shacks, where the smell of roasting meat mingles with the stench of open sewers. You navigate the narrow streets, dodging carts and animals, your eyes taking in the sights and sounds of medieval urban life. The market square is at the heart of the town, a wide open space filled with stalls and vendors, each one hawking their wares with loud, insistent voices. There are bolts of cloth, pottery, tools, food of all kinds, from fresh bread to salted fish to spices imported from distant lands. You wander through the crowd, your eyes wide with wonder, for the market is a place of abundance, at least compared to the scarcity of the village. But even here, in the midst of plenty, there is hardship. You see beggars huddled in doorways, their hands outstretched, their faces gaunt with hunger. You see children, ragged and barefoot, darting through the crowd, their eyes sharp with desperation. And you see the poor, the laborers and the servants, their faces lined with fatigue, their bodies bent with the weight of endless toil. You think of the inn, of the shared sleeping quarters, and you realize that even in the towns, where wealth is more abundant, the conditions of life are often no better than in the villages. The poor still struggle to survive, the winters still bring cold and hunger, and sleep is still a communal affair, shared with strangers in crowded rooms. You make your way to the edge of the market, where a church stands, its stone walls gray and weathered, its heavy wooden doors open to the faithful. You step inside, seeking a moment of respite from the noise and the cold, and find yourself in a dim, echoing space, the air thick with incense and the scent of old stone. The church is nearly empty, just a few figures kneeling in the pews, their heads bowed in prayer. You slip into a pew near the back and sit, your hands folded in your lap, your eyes fixed on the altar. The silence is soothing after the clamor of the market, and you let yourself relax, your mind drifting. You think of the monasteries, of the monks and nuns who dedicate their lives to prayer and service, and you wonder what it would be like to live such a life. To give up the world, to renounce marriage and family, to spend your days in contemplation and devotion. It seems both peaceful and lonely, a life removed from the struggles and joys of ordinary existence. But you know that the monastic life is not as serene as it might seem. You've heard stories of the harsh conditions, the cold dormitories, the meager food, the long hours of work and prayer. The monks and nuns, like everyone else in the medieval world, must struggle to survive, to endure the hardships of daily life. And yet, there is something appealing about it, the sense of purpose, the commitment to something greater than oneself. You wonder if, in another life, you might have chosen that path, might have found peace in the cloistered walls of a monastery, in the rhythms of prayer and labor. But that is not your path. You are a traveler, a wanderer, and your journey is far from over. You rise from the pew, your knees stiff from kneeling, and make your way back out into the cold. The town is still bustling, the market still crowded, the streets still filled with people going about their daily business. You rejoin the flow, letting the crowd carry you along, your mind still turning over the thoughts that have occupied you since you woke. And as the day wears on, as the sun climbs higher and then begins its slow descent toward the horizon, you find yourself thinking once more of the young bride, of the village, of the life you left behind. You wonder if you will ever return, if you will ever see those familiar faces again, if you will ever feel the warmth of that small, smoky cottage. But for now, you are here, in this town, among strangers, seeking warmth and shelter and a place to rest. And as the evening approaches, as the cold sets in once more, you make your way back to the inn, ready to face another night of communal sleep, another night of enduring the cold, another night of survival. You step now into a different world, a world of stone and power, of grand halls and towering walls. You are no longer a peasant or a traveler, but a servant in a great castle, one of the many who labor in the service of the lord and lady who rule over the surrounding lands. The castle is a fortress, built to withstand siege and assault, its walls thick and impenetrable, its towers rising high above the landscape. But for all its grandeur, it is also a cold, uncomfortable place, where warmth is a constant struggle and sleep is often fitful and uneasy. You sleep in the servants' quarters, a long, narrow room tucked away in one of the castle's many towers. The room is lined with simple wooden cots, each one covered with a thin straw mattress and a scratchy woolen blanket. There is no fire here, for the servants are not permitted the luxury of warmth, and the stone walls radiate cold, making the room feel like a tomb. You lie on your cot, your body tense with cold, and listen to the sounds of the castle settling in for the night. The wind howls around the towers, rattling the shutters and whistling through the cracks in the stone. Somewhere below, you can hear the faint sounds of the great hall, where the lord and his guests are feasting, their voices and laughter carrying through the thick walls. But up here, in the servants' quarters, there is no such revelry. The other servants lie in their cots, their bodies still, their breathing shallow. Some sleep, exhausted from the day's labor. Others lie awake, like you, their minds turning over the events of the day, the tasks that await them in the morning. You think of the lord and lady, sleeping in their grand chamber, their bed draped with heavy curtains, their mattress stuffed with feathers, their room warmed by a blazing fire. You think of the contrast between their comfort and your discomfort, and you feel a pang of resentment, quickly suppressed. This is the way of the world, the way it has always been. The nobles live in luxury, the servants in austerity, and to question this is to invite punishment. You pull the thin blanket tighter, trying to trap what little warmth you have, and close your eyes. Sleep comes slowly, fitfully, interrupted by the cold and the sound of the wind. But eventually, exhaustion wins, and you drift into an uneasy slumber, your dreams filled with images of warmth and comfort, of fires that never go out, of beds that are soft and warm. The morning comes early in the castle. You are woken by the sound of a bell, ringing loudly in the cold air, calling the servants to their duties. You rise quickly, your body stiff from the hard cot, and dress in the dim light. Around you, the other servants do the same, their movements quick and efficient, born of long practice. You make your way down the narrow stone stairs, your breath visible in the cold air, and join the stream of servants heading toward the kitchens. The castle is a labyrinth of corridors and staircases, of great halls and small rooms, and you navigate it with ease, your feet knowing the way even in the darkness. The kitchens are already bustling with activity. The cooks are preparing the morning meal, their hands moving quickly as they chop vegetables, stir pots, and knead dough. The air is thick with the smell of baking bread and roasting meat, and your stomach rumbles with hunger. You take your place at the long wooden table where the servants eat, and you are given a bowl of porridge, thin and watery, and a hunk of stale bread. You eat quickly, grateful for the warmth of the food, even if it is meager and unappetizing. As you eat, you think about the life of a servant in a castle, and you realize that it is not so different from the life of a peasant in a village. The work is hard, the conditions harsh, and the struggle to survive is constant. The only difference is the scale. The castle is larger, the tasks more varied, but the underlying reality is the same. You finish your meal and set to work, your tasks for the day laid out by the steward, a stern man with a face like granite. You will clean the great hall, scrubbing the floors and wiping down the tables. You will tend the fires in the Lord's chamber, ensuring they burn brightly throughout the day. You will fetch water from the well, hauling heavy buckets up the long stone stairs. The work is endless, and there is no time for rest. As the day wears on, you find yourself in the great hall, a vast room with high ceilings and tall windows. The floor is covered with rushes, just like in the peasant cottage, and the air smells of smoke and old food. The walls are lined with tapestries, grand and colorful, depicting scenes of battle and hunting, and the high table at the far end of the room is set with silver plates and goblets. But for all its grandeur, the hall is cold. The fire in the great hearth burns brightly, but its warmth barely reaches the corners of the room, and you can feel the cold seeping through the stone walls, the drafts swirling around your ankles. You shiver as you work, your hands red and chapped from the cold water, your back aching from bending over the floors. You think of the lord and lady, sitting at the high table, their bodies warmed by the fire, their bellies full of rich food and wine. And you think of yourself, shivering in the cold, your stomach rumbling with hunger, your body aching from labor. The contrast is stark, and it fills you with a sense of injustice, a feeling that this is not how things should be. But you push these thoughts aside and focus on your work. Complaining will do no good, and to voice such thoughts would be dangerous. The castle is a place of strict hierarchy, where everyone has their place, and to challenge that order is to invite punishment. As evening falls, you make your way back to the servants' quarters, your body exhausted, your mind numb. You climb into your cot, pulling the thin blanket over yourself, and close your eyes. The cold is there, pressing in from all sides, but you are too tired to care. Sleep comes quickly, a deep, dreamless sleep, and you are grateful for it. The days in the castle blur together, each one much like the last. You wake, you work, you sleep. The work is hard and unending, the conditions harsh, but you endure because you have no choice. This is your life, and you have learned to accept it, to find small comforts in the midst of the hardship. You think often of the young bride in the village, of the life she is living, and you wonder if she is happy. You wonder if she has found a way to make peace with her marriage, to find warmth and companionship in the midst of the cold. You hope she has, for you know how hard it is to survive in this world, how easy it is to be broken by the weight of it all. But you also know that she is strong, that she has the resilience to endure. She is a medieval woman, and medieval women are survivors, shaped by hardship, tested by adversity, but enduring nonetheless. And as you lie in your cold cot, the wind howling outside, the castle settling into silence, you close your eyes and let yourself drift, knowing that tomorrow will bring more of the same, more labor, more cold, more struggle. But you will endure because that is what you do. You will survive because you have no other choice. The medieval world is a harsh place, and winter is its cruelest season. But the people of this world are not passive victims of the cold. They have developed a host of techniques and rituals, some practical, some rooted in superstition, to help them survive the long, dark nights. You think of the young bride again, lying in her narrow bed, the straw mattress rustling beneath her, the woolen blanket scratchy against her skin. She has learned, as you have learned, that survival in winter requires more than just a fire and a blanket. It requires ingenuity, resourcefulness, and a willingness to do whatever it takes to stay alive. One of the most important techniques is layering. In a world without central heating, where fireplaces are the only source of warmth, people wear multiple layers of clothing, even to bed. The young bride sleeps in her shift, a long linen garment that covers her from neck to ankles, and over that she pulls on a woolen tunic, and over that a cloak. She wraps her feet in strips of cloth, makeshift socks to keep her toes warm, and she pulls a woolen cap over her head, for much of the body's heat escapes through the head. Even so, she is cold. The layers help, but they are not enough. And so she employs another technique, one that is both practical and intimate. She presses close to her husband, seeking the warmth of his body. In the narrow bed, there is no room for distance, no space for modesty. They sleep pressed together, their bodies generating a shared warmth that is greater than the sum of its parts. This is not unique to the young bride and her husband. All across the medieval world, people sleep in close quarters, their bodies pressed together for warmth. In the peasant cottages, entire families share a single bed, parents and children huddle together under a pile of blankets. In the inns and monasteries, strangers sleep side by side, their bodies a collective defense against the cold. But physical warmth is not the only concern. The medieval mind is deeply superstitious, and winter nights are filled with fears of the supernatural. People believe that the darkness is inhabited by spirits and demons, that the cold is a manifestation of evil, that the long nights are a time of danger. And so they employ rituals to protect themselves. The young bride, before she goes to bed, makes the sign of the cross, a gesture meant to ward off evil. She places a sprig of rosemary under her pillow, for rosemary is believed to bring good dreams and protect against nightmares. She whispers a prayer, asking God to watch over her through the night, to keep her safe from harm. Her mother-in-law, more set in the old ways, employs other rituals. She places a horseshoe above the door, for iron is believed to repel witches and evil spirits. She scatters salt across the threshold, another charm against malevolent forces. And she mutters incantations, half prayers, half spells, passed down through generations, their words worn smooth with repetition. These rituals may seem foolish to modern eyes, but to the people of the medieval world, they are as important as the fire in the hearth or the blanket on the bed. They provide a sense of control in a world that is often chaotic and unpredictable, a way to impose order on the darkness. You think, too, of the practical rituals, the routines that structure daily life and make survival possible. The young bride has learned to bank the fire at night, covering the coals with ash to keep them smoldering until morning. This ensures that the fire does not go out completely, that there is always a source of warmth, however faint. She has learned to keep a supply of kindling and firewood close at hand, so that when she wakes in the morning, she can quickly revive the fire without having to venture out into the cold. She has learned to wrap hot stones from the hearth in cloth and place them at the foot of the bed, where they radiate heat for hours, warming her feet and legs. These are small things, but they make a difference. They are the accumulated wisdom of generations, passed down from mother to daughter, from one peasant wife to the next. They are the techniques that keep people alive through the long, cold winters, that allow them to endure when survival seems impossible. And there are communal rituals, too, events that bring the village together, that provide a sense of solidarity and shared purpose. In the depths of winter, when the days are shortest and the nights longest, the village gathers for feasts and celebrations, moments of warmth and light in the midst of the darkness. The young bride attends these gatherings, her husband by her side, and she finds comfort in the press of bodies, the warmth of the fire, the sound of laughter and song. For a few hours, the cold is forgotten, the hardships set aside, and there is only the warmth of community, the sense of belonging to something larger than oneself. But these moments are fleeting. The feasts end, the fire dies down, and the cold returns, relentless and unyielding. And so the young bride goes back to her cottage, to her narrow bed, to the endless cycle of labor and survival. She thinks often of the future, of the children she will bear, of the life she will build with her husband. She hopes that in time, the awkwardness between them will fade, that they will find a way to be partners, to support each other through the hardships. She hopes that love will grow, slowly and quietly, like a seed planted in winter, waiting for the warmth of spring to bloom. But she also knows that hope is not enough. She knows that survival requires more than wishes and dreams. It requires hard work, resilience, and the willingness to endure whatever comes. And so she steels herself for the long winter ahead, for the cold nights and the endless labor, for the struggles and the small victories. And as she lies in her bed, the fire burning low, the room growing cold, she closes her eyes and lets herself drift, secure in the knowledge that she will survive this night, and the next, and the next. That she will endure because that is what medieval women do. They endure. Winter also brings with it a host of practical challenges that require ingenuity and cooperation. The young bride learns that in the depths of winter, when the ground is frozen and the snow is deep, the village must work together to ensure everyone's survival. One of the most important communal tasks is the gathering and storing of firewood. Throughout the fall, the villagers venture into the nearby forest, cutting down trees and hauling the logs back to the village. The work is hard and dangerous, but it is essential, for without firewood, the fires will go out, and without fires, people will freeze. The young bride and her husband take their share of the work, spending long days in the forest, the cold seeping through their clothes, their hands blistered from the axe and the saw. They stack the logs in neat piles behind the cottage, covering them with straw to keep them dry. And every day, they bring in a few logs, feeding the fire that keeps them alive. But firewood is not the only concern. Food is scarce in winter, and the village must rely on the stores laid up in the fall. The young bride tends the family's small store of grain, rationing it carefully to ensure it lasts until spring. She grinds the grain into flour, bakes bread, and makes porridge, stretching the supplies as far as they will go. She also learns to supplement their diet with whatever she can find. She ventures out into the frozen landscape, searching for edible plants, for roots and berries that might have survived the frost. She sets snares for rabbits and birds, though game is scarce in winter, and more often than not, the snares come up empty. And she learns the value of community, of neighbors helping neighbors, of shared resources and mutual support. When one family's store runs low, others share what they have. When someone falls ill, the village rallies, bringing food and medicine, tending the sick. This is how survival works in the medieval world, not through individual effort alone, but through the collective strength of the community. The young bride also learns about the rituals that mark the winter season, the celebrations that provide a break from the monotony and hardship. There is Christmas, a time of feasting and merrymaking, when the villagers gather in the great hall of the manor house, and the Lord provides a feast for his tenants. There is Twelfth Night, when the village celebrates with singing and dancing, and the young bride and her husband join in, their laughter mingling with the others. These celebrations are important, not just for the food and the warmth, but for the sense of continuity they provide. They are a reminder that winter, however harsh, is not forever, that spring will come again, that life will go on. And as the days begin to lengthen, as the first signs of spring appear, the young bride feels a sense of hope. She has survived her first winter as a wife, and she has learned that she is stronger than she thought. She has endured the cold, the hardship, the endless labor, and she has come through it, not unscathed, but alive. The fire is burning low now, its flames flickering and dancing, casting long shadows on the walls. The young bride sits beside it, her hands outstretched to catch the warmth, her body relaxing as the heat seeps into her bones. Outside, the wind has died down, and the village is quiet, settled into the deep silence of the winter night. She rises, stretching, and makes her way to the bed. Her husband is already there, lying on his back, his eyes closed, his breathing deep and steady. She climbs in beside him, pulling the blanket over them both, and lies still, listening to the sounds of the night. The cottage creaks and groans, the wood settling in the cold. The fire hisses and pops, the last of the logs burning down to coals. And from somewhere outside, an owl hoots, its call lonely and distant. She thinks of the day that has just passed, of the tasks she completed, the bread she baked, the water she fetched, the clothes she mended. She thinks of her mother-in-law's grudging nod of approval, of her husband's brief smile. These are small things, but they matter. They are the building blocks of a life, the small victories that make the hardships bearable. And she thinks of the future, of the children she will bear, of the life she will build in this small cottage, in this tiny village. She thinks of the seasons that will come and go, the springs and summers and falls and winters, each one bringing its own challenges, its own joys. She thinks, too, of the women who came before her, the generations of peasant wives who lived and loved and labored in cottages just like this one, who faced the same struggles, the same fears, the same small triumphs. She feels connected to them, linked by a chain of shared experience that stretches back through the centuries. And in this moment, lying in the darkness, the fire burning low, the cold pressing in from all sides, she feels a sense of peace. She has survived her wedding night, her first days as a wife, her first winter in this new life. She has learned that she is capable, that she is strong, that she can endure. She closes her eyes, her breathing slowing, her body relaxing into the hard mattress. Beside her, her husband shifts, his arm draping over her, his warmth a comfort in the cold. And slowly, gradually, she drifts into sleep, her dreams filled with images of warmth and light, of spring flowers and summer sun, of a future that, however uncertain, holds the promise of hope. As the night deepens, the village settles into a profound stillness. The fires in the cottages burn down to embers, their glow faint and fading. The animals in the barns shift and sigh, their bodies pressed together for warmth. And the people, the men and women and children who make up this small community, lie in their beds, their bodies still, their minds at rest. The young bride sleeps deeply now, her body finally succumbing to the exhaustion of the day. Her dreams are vivid and strange, a jumble of images and sensations. She dreams of her mother's cottage, of her childhood, of the girl she used to be. She dreams of the future, of children yet unborn, of a life lived in partnership with the man beside her. And she dreams of warmth, of a fire that never goes out, of a world where the cold cannot touch her, where the hardships are softened by love and kindness and the simple comforts of a life well lived. Outside, the stars shine brightly in the clear winter sky, their light cold and distant. The moon, a pale crescent, hangs low on the horizon, casting a faint silver glow over the snow-covered fields. The world is frozen, still, waiting for the warmth of spring to bring it back to life. But for now, in this moment, there is only the night, the cold, and the quiet. The medieval world is a harsh place, a world of struggle and survival. But it is also a world of resilience, of community, of the small, everyday acts of courage that keep people alive. And as the young bride sleeps, her body warm beside her husband's, her mind at peace, she embodies all of this. She is a survivor, a woman shaped by hardship but not broken by it. She is a wife, a member of a community, a link in a chain that stretches back through the centuries and forward into the future. And in her sleep, she smiles, a small, barely perceptible curve of her lips, as if some deep, instinctive part of her knows that she will be all right, that she will endure, that she will survive the long, cold winter and emerge into the warmth of spring, stronger and more resilient than before. The fire burns down to nothing, the last of the coals turning to ash. The room grows cold, the air sharp and biting. But the young bride does not wake. She sleeps on, her body curled under the blanket, her breathing deep and steady. And as the night wears on, as the hours pass and the darkness deepens, the village remains still, a small pocket of life in the vast, frozen landscape. The people sleep, secure in their cottages, their fires, their blankets, their shared warmth. And in this stillness, in this quiet, there is a kind of peace. The struggles of the day are forgotten, the hardships set aside. There is only the night, the sleep, the dreams that carry people through the darkness and into the light of a new day. Slowly, imperceptibly, the night begins to fade. The sky in the east lightens, the stars dimming, the moon setting below the horizon. The first birds begin to call, their voices tentative and soft, as if testing the air, unsure if it is safe to sing. Inside the cottage, the young bride stirs, her body shifting under the blanket, her eyes fluttering open. The room is dim, the fire long since gone out, the air cold and sharp. She lies still for a moment, her mind emerging slowly from sleep, her body reluctant to leave the warmth of the bed. But the day is calling, and there is work to be done. She sits up, the blanket falling away, the cold hitting her like a slap. She dresses quickly, pulling on her layers of clothing, her hands clumsy with cold. Beside her, her husband still sleeps, his face peaceful, his breathing deep. She tiptoes across the room, careful not to wake him, and kneels by the hearth. She rakes through the ashes, searching for any remaining coals, any spark of warmth that might be coaxed back into flame. And there, buried deep in the ash, she finds a single ember, still glowing faintly, a tiny point of light in the darkness. She smiles, a small, triumphant smile, and begins to build the fire, feeding it with kindling, blowing gently on the ember until it catches, until the flames leap up, bright and warm. The fire spreads, the wood crackling, the light pushing back the darkness, and the room begins to warm. And in that moment, as the fire takes hold, as the warmth spreads through the room, the young bride feels a sense of accomplishment, a quiet pride. She has done this. She has brought light and warmth back into the darkness. She has started a new day. She stands, stretching, and looks out the small window. The village is waking, the smoke from other fires beginning to rise, the sounds of life returning. A new day is beginning, and with it, new challenges, new tasks, new struggles. But she is ready. She has survived the wedding night, the first winter, the long, cold nights. She has learned that she is capable, that she is strong, that she can endure. And as the sun rises, as the light spreads across the frozen landscape, she takes a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill her lungs, feeling the warmth of the fire on her face. She is a medieval woman, and she is a survivor. And that, in the end, is enough. Sweet dreams.